Welcome to Cora's Cottage, where things are homegrown and handmade. I started my journey in town on a small city lot where I grew a garden and preserved most of what I grew. While I was in town, I continued to learn kitchen and other homemaking skills. However, recently, my husband and I have had the opportunity to move out into the country. This means we have more space, and I will be expanding my garden and preservation skills this summer. I want to continue to expand my homesteading and homemaking skills as well. Follow along with me on this journey as I share what I learn. Summer is starting to get to the end, and that means that sweet corn is officially here and we have lots of it. So we went to the sweet corn patch and picked a whole bunch this last week, and I put it up during nap time. So I'm not doing a large batch of corn. I can't remember if it was 10 or 12 bags, but not enough for the year, but enough to get us a good start on it. And that was good enough since I only had nap time. So first up, I boiled the ears for 3 to 5 minutes, and then I removed them and put them into cold water. I like to use this big canner because I can fit 12 ears in it at once. It does take longer to bring it to a boil, but it does allow me to do 12 ears at once, and it works about perfectly time-wise for me doing it on my own to cool ears and cut it off and keep the rotation going. So then I use this sink basin to cool the ears. I've used a bucket or a tub in the past where I just run cold water through it and allow the excess water to overflow at the top, which is great because the hot water will run over the top and the cold water will sink to the bottom, and that helps to keep the water cool to cool the ears quickly. And I like to just use a large container of any sort to transport my ears at this point. I used this Rubbermaid container today and it worked really well. I have this particular setup because I happen to have this restaurant stainless steel pan, but if you don't have one, there are some other options that you can use. But I do find that this works really well for me to just slant this cutting board in here, because then the kernels fall down the board and I don't have to worry about them being underneath my knife or underneath my cob as I'm cutting. Now, if you don't have the stainless steel restaurant pan like this and a cutting board that will fit in there diagonally at an angle like this, you can use a bundt pan. You simply stand up your ear of corn just like I'm doing here in the center of the bundt pan, and then you can cut the kernels off and the bundt pan will catch them. Then you can transfer them into a larger bowl or whatever you need if you want to keep cutting and not bag it every single time you fill the bundt pan, which I totally understand. That's why I have a large bowl here, because I don't want to bag corn constantly. That works really well if you have one of those. The other tool that I would say is an absolute must-have when putting up sweet corn is a sharp knife or the ability to sharpen your favorite knife. Working with a dull knife is more dangerous, and it just is a frustrating process. Having a nice sharp knife, it just glides right through the kernels and takes them off the ear of corn without much work at all, and it is much less frustrating. I have worked with a dull knife before, and in this process, I dulled my one knife too much before I switched it, and I was starting to get frustrated, and then I went, oh, better switch my knife, and sure enough, that was my problem. I've heard of lots of different methods for getting the corn off of the cob. They make tools that you can just take and slide down the cob and it takes the kernels off. While these do make the process faster, our family just doesn't like them because every cob can be different size and diameter, and so you might be getting hardly any of the kernel on one cob, but then you might be getting a whole bunch of cob in the next one. And so just because cobs are all different sizes and those are a one size fits all, our family doesn't like them because we do not like it when there's cob in our corn, and we don't like to waste and leave any kernels on the cob. And so we prefer to just cut it off like this ourselves with a knife. I've heard of people using various different knives. My favorite ones are from Rada, and I just use the standard size ones. There's also paring knives that some people enjoy from Rada as well, but I find these to work really well. They hold a sharp edge very well, and they sharpen nicely. I've heard some people use various types of electric knives. If you're comfortable with those, that's great. I, again, am not a huge fan of them. I just find them harder to control the depth of how deep you're getting when you're cutting off the kernels. You might be getting a lot of cob on one area and just hardly any of the kernel in another, and it's just a lot easier, in my opinion, to control the depth of your cut with a manual, old-fashioned knife with a nice sharp edge on it. Once I get corn going, I get a pretty good rotation of dropping corn into the hot boiling water, having a batch that is in the cooling basin, and then a batch that I am cutting off the cob. And then I just rotate the batch from the cooling basin over to be cutting off the cob, and the batch from the boiling water has actually come to a boil for about 3 to 5 minutes by then, and I can transfer it over to the cold water and repeat my process over again. My cobs are coming out of a cooler where they've been on ice overnight. This is because, again, with a toddler, it can be very difficult to get much done during a day, so I'm doing this during nap time. So last night, my husband and I stayed up after she went to bed, and we husked and desilked all of this corn so that I could just go right into blanching it and getting it cut off the cob today. So it does cool down my boiling water pretty greatly when I drop in 12 of those cold ears of corn. I find this process works pretty well to do it where I am husking and soaking it the night before with my husband and then canning it the next day. Now, in an ideal world, I would pick the corn in the morning, husk it, and put it up all in the same day just to keep as many nutrients as we can. But in this stage of life, that just is not really a possibility. And so we work with what we have. And in my opinion, it's better to get the sweet corn that we know where it's coming from and how it's been treated into our freezer rather than going and purchasing corn that we have zero control over how it was raised and where it came from. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't like to bag at multiple times throughout the process. I just wait until the end, so I'm getting ready to bag everything up. I like to bag things into freezer quart bags that have been labeled with the product and the year, so in this case, corn and 25. I'm using this funnel just to help keep the mouth of the bag a little bit cleaner so that I don't have a bunch of sweet corn stuck to the Ziploc portion of the bag. And I am doing 4 cups or shoving this quart bag as full as I can get it because that is 4 cups for us. Now, in the past, I've done 2 cups, but this just wasn't enough, so you can adjust whatever amount you need for your family. 2 cups would be about approximate to a can of corn that you would buy at the store. And so if your family eats 2 of those, I recommend filling a quart bag as full as you can get it. Here I am not using a full cup scoop because if you're counting my scoops, you'll notice that I scooped way more than 4 times here. That's because that is not a 1 cup scoop. And you also can't get it super full when you have pieces of corn that are stuck together in nice strips like you'll notice here. You notice that I squished that bag down so that it was nice and flat. This is so that when I store it in my freezer, after flash freezing it, it will stack super nicely. I've learned this the hard way by not doing that and just allowing them to freeze in whatever shape they landed in the freezer. And this made it very difficult for organizing down the road if I needed to move them or reorganize when we got more meat or another vegetable that needed to go into the freezer as well. I will drop all of this corn into the freezer for at least 24 hours before I go and store it where I want it to be stored, stacked up all together. I do my best to try to lay it out in different places in the freezer so that it will freeze more quickly and not sit in there and warm up all the other product that is in our freezers.